Joining me today is Ben Kinchlow. He is a minister, broadcaster, author, businessman, and he is known throughout the world as the longtime co-host of the 700 Club on CBN and host of the international edition of the 700 Club as seen in more than 80 countries. Mr. Kinchlow, great to have you on today. I was reading about your thoughts that you're concerned about America being kind of a terrified puppy, leaving Yemen and closing other embassies and consulates because of the threat from a terrorist group. Let's start there. Elaborate on that. Why do you see that as kind of cowardly behavior from America?
Well, you need to understand the people you're dealing with. One of the problems that we often have is we think people think like we think. We have a tendency to give people the same degree of concept of right and wrong that we have. So consequently, we would say to us, this is a move that is to protect our citizens. So we're going to close our embassies down because there was a threat of terrorism. Unfortunately, that is seen by the people we're dealing with as an act of cowardice. You cannot negotiate from a point of weakness, which is what we have been doing for the last several years, or certainly the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, to the people in the Middle East. You see, David, the people in the Middle East, particularly those who are of Muslim faith, do not think like the people in America think, because we are ascribing to them the same Judeo-Christian values that we adhere to, and that is not the case.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, because back when we had embassy and consulate violence under the George W. Bush administration, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see you making the same types of claims. And I go back and I'll pose the question to you. You told Pat Robertson on the 700 Club a few years back that blacks voting for Democrats are partaking of evil deeds. So my question is, given that your criticism is happening during the Obama administration, and you've been very clear that you tend to dislike the idea of African Americans voting for Democrats, isn't this just political posturing from you? Where were you when it was George W. Bush?
Well, exactly the same place. If you remember correctly, when the people attacked America, 9/11, we took specific, stringent, strong action against those people who were responsible for attacking America.
Well, hold on a second, though, Mr. Kinchlow. 9/11 was used to not only create a flurry of new laws regarding surveillance and the Patriot Act, but it was used to get us into a war in Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11. It was, I think that you're actually making the opposite point that you want to. 9/11 was used to get into a war with people who had nothing to do with those attacks.
Well, that's your opinion, David. You're certainly entitled to your opinion.
Hold on a second, Mr. Kinchlow. Are you saying you believe that Iraq did have a role in 9/11?
I do indeed.
Where did you get that idea?
From the fact that we had research done by our security forces to find out that there was, in fact, actual participation from the Iraqi leadership in what happened in America, 9/11.
That's completely untrue. It's just factually untrue. All we know is that there had been some level of communication between Iraq and Al-Qaeda years before and completely unrelated to 9/11, and that there was absolutely no collaborative effort. So you actually think that 9/11 was a good reason to go into Iraq, I'm hearing you say.
Anyone who attacks America should be aware of the fact that if you attack the United States of America, you do so at your own risk. And
but Iraq didn't. But Iraq didn't attack.
So your point is what?
That your claim that 9/11 was then responded to appropriately by going into Iraq doesn't make sense, because Iraq simply did not attack us.
Well, it doesn't make sense to you, David, because you have a leftist position that you're adhering to. And
so you're saying if I was a right winger, attacking Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11, would make sense?
It has nothing to do with right wing. It has to do with the facts of the matter. And, you know, there are people who view the same situation from different perspectives. You have one perspective, I have another perspective. That's the difference. We have a difference of opinion.
But it seems to be based...
America a great country. Each one of us can express our opinions.
All right. I mean, I think we may not get further with that. I think my opinion is based on the fact that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11.
As far as you know.
But you have presented no other proof, sir.
I've submitted the same amount of proof that you've submitted, your opinion based on what you think you know, and my opinion based on what I think I know.
Well, my opinion is based on the actual reports about what collaboration there was. But I do want to get one more thing in.
But you do admit that there was collaboration.
There was contact.
That's all
I don't
I'm
admit
asking.
that. There was
That's all I'm saying. There was collaboration.
There was not,
you don't
sir.
know what they collaborated on, but you know there was collaboration.
there was not, in fact. There was contact unrelated to 9/11. But I want to get one more question
because
into
you were there, so you know exactly there was nothing to do with 9/11 because you were in the meeting, right?
Well, but along those lines, you also weren't there, so we're just
Exactly.
guessing. We have to base it off of the evidence we have.
But we have the evidence that says, from the perspective of those people that we elected to represent us, that Iraq was actively involved in the situation. Consequently, we took steps to alleviate that and point out that this should not be a status quo, that you cannot attack the Americans without consequences.
All right. I think we'll let the audience decide. We've had a spirited debate about it. One more question in the limited time we have. You've been a co-host on the 700 Club. We often talk about the different questions that come into the 700 Club that Pat Robertson answers on the show. Be totally upfront with me. Are some of those questions made up, or are you really answering on that show real questions from viewers, Mr. Kinchlow?
Those are real questions from real viewers.
It's so hard to believe that real viewers are asking about demonically possessed sweaters and haunted houses. It's just, that's really, it's for real? You're telling me it's for real?
Yes.
All right. We've heard it here from the longtime co-host of the 700 Club. We've been speaking with Ben Kinchlow. He is a minister. He is a broadcaster, an author, and a businessman. I really do appreciate you being on. Even though we had disagreements, it's really great to talk to you.
Well, that's one of the things that makes America the greatest country in the face of the world, that we get a chance to express our opinions even when we don't agree with one another.
Thank you, and we will have you back anytime.